The standard of models coming through at the moment is really, really good. The manufacturers are pushing the envelope of what can be achieved with current technology. Hi there everyone, welcome back to another video here on my channel with me, Jenny Kirk. It's really great to see you again. I hope you are well. And today we're reviewing a model that came out in the 2019 Hornby range. And there's a lot of these models out there that may be slipping under the radar because of the amazing centenary announcements in 2020. But Rails of Sheffield have got a sale on with this item, and we've got a link down below to help you find it if you really like this review and want to go and get one yourself. And also this review has been made possible by the generous sponsorship of Train-O-Matic, manufacturers of DCC decoders made by hobbyists for hobbyists. And we're going to be showing you a little bit more about fitting one of these into this model to get the best out of it later on. But without further ado, come with me. It'd be great to have your company. Let's take a closer look. Well, this is the model. It's one of Hornby's Princess Coronation class, Duchess of Gloucester. But what's interesting about this, it differs a little bit from the Duchess of Montrose model that we reviewed comparatively recently. And that is that this is the de-streamlined version. So there are a few detail differences, and also it's in this really wonderful BR experimental blue livery, which came in the very early days of British Railways when they're kind of finding their feet over what livery to use on the locomotives. And I really am a bit of a sucker for a blue locomotive to break up the monotony of black and green. Not that I don't like green, but this blue is nice. So we've got on the end there, it's R3682, BR Princess Coronation class, Duchess of Gloucester, number 46225. And like I said before, we've got an affiliate link down below that takes you to the Rails of Sheffield site if this is an item that really interests you. At the moment, it's £139.50, which is actually a really good price for these Princess Coronation class locomotives. So I'm going to quickly get it out of the box, and it's got all the usual bump. This comes DCC ready, but it's not DCC fitted. But one thing that you can get for them is Hornby do a specific TTS sound chip suitable for these. Also we get a detailing pack here, and we get the tender brake gear, the locomotive brake gear, a few extra bits like drain cocks, front coupling, there's an M pocket for the front coupling, and also we've got some front steps, I think. And this bit, I do get asked about these a lot. It's common to the Princess Coronation, and also the A4 class have these. It's a flanged set of rear bogie wheels, and as we do the review that will come clear. And actually it's a really good idea to improve something on this model that is a compromise to get round train set curves. And actually this says minimum radius 483 millimeters. That sounds awfully precise, but it's presumably radius 2 or radius 3. I'd have to look that up. So I'm going to put those to one side. Again, like I said, we'll come back to that set of wheels at some point. And I'm going to get this out of the packaging. Don't forget as well, a little lump of foam between the buffers. Ooh! Which you've got to be ever so careful. Gosh, when you come to remove this, be ever so careful. I think I've got away with that, but it might be very easy to damage your locomotive, but it does ensure that those buffers don't get damaged in transit. So I'm just feeling there, yeah, that does seem all right. So we're all well with that. Now, there's a lot of similarities with when we did the Duchess of Montrose review. So I'm going to show you a little bit of archive footage of that, just to give you some of the differences. But this actually has some of the detail differences that the de-streamlined members of this class had. Now, Duchess of Hamilton is the National Railway Museum, currently in its streamlined form. But after the war, these were de-streamlined, actually some of them during the war. And some of the detail differences is we get a slightly flattened smoke box top there, just at the front. And that's where the curve went down originally. Other detail differences that you see here is we've got this kind of split footplate. On the Duchess and Montrose, that's a curved footplate because that locomotive was never built in streamlined form. But the de-streamlined ones have that kind of gap there. And you might remember this from Hornby 00 days, because when they introduced the City of London, and I believe the City of Liverpool model as well, they actually changed the die casting tool to represent this. Although later on in their lives, when they got new smoke boxes, this slightly flattened front did disappear as they got fitted with a standard smoke box. So this is suitable for this earlier experimental BR Blue, but certainly by the time they got to the BR Maroon period, they would have had a normal smoke box front but retained that stepped front. This is a very pretty livery, I have to say. The rest of the fundamentals of the model are exactly the same as with that Duchess and Montrose review, so I'm not going to linger too much. What we might do is put a link to that Duchess and Montrose video down in the description box below, so if you want the full detail, which is applicable to this model as well, go and check that out after the video. But this blue is really nicely applied. It's kind of got like a satin finish, and it does look pretty perfect to my eyes. The tender and the locomotive, just like we've come to expect, are semi-permanently coupled. They've got these screws, so you can undo them if you want, but it really does go a long way to save stressing this connection between the locomotive and the tender. Now, whilst I've got it upside down, I want to bring your attention to the rear bogie. This isn't actually a bogie per se. One of the things that Hornby have done is they've tooled this so there's absolutely no gap. It is actually part of the chassis. So to avoid this derailing when it goes around corners, they fit it as standard with these flangeless wheels, and that means that they can kind of swing out. It doesn't matter, it's not going to cause any issues. But if you want to use this, if you've got very, very prototypical curves, or if this is going in a display cabinet, or you're running something like an end-to-end layout that doesn't have curves in particular at all, then you can swap that out with that flanged wheel that's in the separate detail pack, and that just gives a little bit more of a prototypical look to it. And there's just a little keeper plate there held by one screw, and then you can just take that out, put the new one in, put the keeper plate back in. It's dead easy to do. Now, as the Duchess and Montrose review was, it's a centre pivot front bogie, and I do love these from Hornby. They really give the locomotive a sense of grace as it goes through corners, and you can see as well at the front as well. I like these cutouts in the front bit of the frame. It just gives it a sense of mass, just like the real ones. So it's another area that Hornby do ever so well on these models. I also did an extreme old versus new review of the Hornby 00 Princess Coronation, the very first to be released on the market, versus the all-new one. And it's really interesting to see, firstly, how good the Hornby 00 model was for its day, but also how far we have come since. And you can see this plethora of separately applied detail. Underneath the boiler, we've got the air gap through there as well, all of this extra ancillary equipment. The splashes are all in the right place, lining up with the wheels. And then we've got the Walschaerts valve gear and the connecting rods, which Hornby does ever so well. And as you've just seen in the Class 8 review, one of the things that I compared the all-new Class 8 to the old one with is those coupling rods. Hornby really do this well, so it's great to be able to see that this locomotive is no exception whatsoever. Now, I'm just looking on here, seeing whether there's a speedo cable or anything. It doesn't have a speedo cable, but it doesn't look like it's supposed to either. So it's just something that came up in my A4 review. Now, we also commented in the Duchess and Montrose review, this coal insert is removable, and inside you see a representation, non-working representation, of the coal pusher mechanism. I'm not going to try and get this out. It is actually quite snugly in there, but you can get it out, and then you can model the tender with a variety of either down to empty or up to full with real coal. The actual coal insert is pretty good. Hornby are getting these quite nicely these days, so it fits snugly without any unsightly gaps, and it actually does look reasonably like coal. I'm going to look to the back. We've got some works plates on the back, really nicely tampo finished in there. And also you can see the tender back is slightly different as well. Instead of having a flush tender back, we've got the de-streamlined tender. Now, I don't actually have a model to show you, but on the streamlined version, it had almost like these air smoothing fins on either side that closed up the gap between the locomotive and the coaches for greater drag coefficiency. And that's not a word you use in reviews an awful lot. And this tender is true to form, is tooled to represent those de-streamlined tender. And it's nice to see these subtle attentions to detail that make this a different model to the non-streamlined Duchesses. So actually in Hornby's range, they've got 3 different versions: de-streamlined, streamlined, and never streamlined. And it's great to see all 3 catered for so well. It has tender pickups as well as picking up power from all 6 drivers on the locomotive itself, and it does make for an incredibly smooth runner. The buffers are sprung front and back. These are just a little bit sticky, I've noticed, although they're probably quite easy to free up, and it's only a minor detail. In terms of everything else, flanges do look fairly scale, and the wheels as well. Older Hornby models had a slightly toy-like looking wheels, but none of that here. The Hornby really have massively upped their game in recent years, and it is a pleasure to be able to hold and run this locomotive. Inside the cab, we've got all of the detail that we've come to expect from Hornby, and it really does look something special in there. It would seem a shame to actually even put a crew in there to obscure some of that. So we've got separate tempo printed bits and pieces, separate detail of the regulator, and even we've also got gauges and dials that you can actually read a sense of what they're actually doing in there. I'd just like to take this moment to tell you a little bit about our sponsor, Train-O-Matic. They're made by enthusiasts for enthusiasts, and these really are a great DCC decoder that just work out of the box. It's everybody's dream. It doesn't matter what the manufacturer brand of locomotive is. These are just hassle-free. Minimum fuss, maximum pleasure. Just plug in and go. Check them out at the website www.train-o-matic.com, and it gives you full detailed description of the products that are available and also how to use them and the additional super power packs that go with them if you so choose. On the cab roof, we've got this posable hatch so you can have it open and shut, and it's just little features like this that really do bring something special to this model. And they do look like they should be fragile, but actually they do seem fairly resilient. Brass turned safety valves inserted in the top there, they are really nicely done. And then we've got the whistle on the top of the smoke box, again separately applied detail. The handrails on there, they are wire and they are separately applied, really nicely done. And the smoke deflectors as well. These are really something special. They're actually quite fine. They have the same sort of scale thickness that you would expect from something on a real thing made of metal. Really nicely done. The double chimney on the top, you can see right down into the darkness of the smoke box. And that's something that for me, when you're looking down on these models, and let's face it, you look down on them an awful lot when they're on your layout, it's nice to be able to see that there's a sense that there is a smoke box inside there, rather than just see them go down to a kind of blocked flatness, which we used to get on models, which in some ways did detract, but none of that here. This is really nicely done. The lining is sharp, looks to be 2 bands of white with a band of, I'm guessing, black in between. They do seem pretty straight and true, and actually very, very fine. There's just a little hint of fuzziness in places, but it's not a deal clincher. You really have to go looking for it to find it. Rivet detail as well is nicely done, and it just is exquisite. The more you look at this, the better it gets. Tempo printing of other bits and pieces. Well, we've got some of the ancillary equipment on the side here picked out in a brass colour, black colour. I think there's even a little bit of gunmetal colour down there as well. And then moving back to the cab, we have flush glazing, really nicely done. And the number very, very slickly and sharply printed, 46255, with the power classification above of 7p. On the tender, the Cycling Lion logo is really sharply defined, and those colours are exquisite. Even the detail of the lion is just there, and under magnification it looks really good. Other detail that I can find on here, all of this kind of brass stroke phosphor bronze pipework of the injectors is nicely done, separately applied, and that goes a long way to obscure the tender drawbar. Really nicely done. Again, to the underside, we have wire sanding pipes to the main drivers. Nicely done. Do be careful with these. They can become bent out of shape and catch on bits and pieces. So do make sure that you don't catch them on bits and pieces and have them just bend to the point where they start to catch on your track. And then in terms of couplings, we've got a slimline tension lock coupling on the back in a NEM pocket, so dead easy to replace to anything else that you want to go with. And as I alluded to in the detail pack, we have the means to add a slimline tension lock coupling or indeed a KD or anything else to the front if you so choose. But I personally think it spoils the lines of this locomotive, and as you can see there, the front face of this locomotive is a beauty to behold, and it would be a shame to ruin that with a big ugly tension lock coupling. So we're up here in the loft and I've got the blue Duchess of Gloucester in front of me, and I'm going to show you just how easy it is to fit a DCC chip to one of these. So first of all, very carefully turn the model over. Small jeweler's crosshead screwdriver, you'll find a screw either side at the front of the tender, and just these should be not too tight. What you don't want to do is round those screws. There is another screw underneath the coupling. You can lever that out quite readily using a flathead jeweler's screwdriver, and then just make sure you get that out. You then find that the entire tender lid, it should just come free with a gentle tug. And what you see inside here, that's the space where a speaker would fit. This comes out, you can fit a speaker in if you're going to fit a sound chip. But I've chosen to fit the Train-O-Matic 8-pin wired decoder. So we've got one of these here, and you can also fit a super power pack if you so choose. It's got the solder tabs on there, but for this review I'm not going to. Just as is standard with all DCC decoders, orange is pin 1, so just look on here and see if we can see where the pin 1 is. I can't see it. Yes, I can. Number 1 is this bottom corner here, so we're going to make sure that the orange wire lines up with there. Gently lever this out, line up the pins of the chip, and just gentle pressure, getting that down and in. Now the chip comes ready shrink wrapped, so you don't have to worry about it shorting on anything. You don't need to use any electrical tape, and that's a real bonus. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tuck this out of the way in there and just feed some of the wires in on top. And so we've got a nice neat job. It's out of the way, it's not going to catch on anything. We're then going to get the tender top back into position. So we've got a couple of clips at the back. We just need to make sure that they clip into place, and then once they're in, turn it over, and it's a reverse of the process that we employed when we took the tender top off. And there we have it. Everything's in and ready. We dump it on the programming track and we can program that up just fine and make sure that everything works. So in terms of score, the locomotive overall is really nice, and I do like the application of the blue. So in terms of finish, I did like the locomotive livery, and this overall blue is nice. In terms of the application, the tempo printing of the boiler bands, I did detect a slight hint of fuzziness. It wasn't major, so it's not a huge detraction, and the rest of the lining on the tender and the cab sides and the top of the splashers is really nicely done. So for that, I'm going to award this model a 9.4 out of 10. Functionality. Again, this is another area where Hornby do really, really well. Even down to the swappable trailing bogie wheels, where you've got a flanged set in the detail pack if you need to actually use them. although the brake rigging is left for the user to apply. It isn't something that detracts from the model's appearance if you don't apply it, but I can find these things sometimes a little bit fiddly. Some models come with them factory applied, some don't. So with this not having them factory applied, I understand why, but you have to ask, if they can do it for some models, why not others? The front buffers were a little bit sticky, I have to say, but overall I think they'll free up with a bit of use. The sanding pipe's very prone to bending, and actually as the model came out of the box there was a little bit of a bend to them, but as they're a springy wire it's not too much of an issue to put them back into place. I'm going to give this model again a 9.4 out of 10 for functionality. Ease of use, well, this model performs faultlessly first time every time, and actually when it comes to fitting a DCC decoder, as you've seen, that was a pretty easy thing to do. I do love the accessible nature of the tender of these models to fit that chip. Gone are the days where you have to delve inside the locomotive, and also in this there's an awful lot of space, so certainly it would be a contender for one of those smart power packs if you wanted to up the performance of this model. So I'm going to give this a 9.4 out of 10. Again, there's an awful lot of 9.4s here, but certainly it is a great model and there's a lot of thought gone into this. For aesthetics, well, that blue finish really does look something special, and for me, whilst I loved the green model, I'm beginning to look at this and think, actually, maybe this is my favourite. The Princess Coronation suits a wide variety of liveries, and they've appeared from Hornby in a wide variety of them, from LMS blue to LMS maroon, LMS black, and then going into the BR days, experimental blue, green, and also maroon, and some of them did also appear in black also. So there's quite a few liveries to choose from, and Hornby have you covered for all of those. So it doesn't really put a foot wrong for me. It's a great package, and the fact that they have tooled up for some of those subtle detail differences, like the split front buffer beam like that, and the slightly flattened smokebox door, and the streamlining on the back of the tender, well, I'm going to give this a 9.9 out of 10. It just really is pretty good for me. Value for money. They are an expensive locomotive, but on a plus point, Hornby do a TTS sound decoder, which means that you can sound fit this locomotive for a relatively inexpensive price, and I've found them to be pretty good when I've used them in the past. At the moment, they're on sale at Rails for a pretty good price of £139.50, but get them whilst you can, because they're sure to sell out quick at that price. So, value for money, I'm going to say that actually 9.5 out of 10. It is an expensive loco, but you do get a lot of locomotive for your money, and that is good. And the more I look at this, the more I just love it. The Princess Coronation is a class that just keeps on giving, and I'm very happy to add this to my collection. So we've got an overall score of another high scoring 47.6, and maybe I get criticised for being very, very generous, but actually the standard of models coming through at the moment is really, really good. The manufacturers are pushing the envelope of what can be achieved with current technology, and it is great to have these in my collection. Gone are the days of the toy-like models of the 1980s. We really do have something special with this Princess Coronation class. Well, thanks for watching. It's been great to have your company. I hope you like this video. Don't forget to share it, like it too, and subscribe to the channel if you want to be the first to know about new videos as and when they come up. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take really good care of yourself, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit trainomatic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, but a special thanks go out to Anthony Kidson, Michael Churchwood, Alec Ralph, Anthony Hunt, William Wade, Wayne Johns, Offshore Allen, oorail.co.uk, Tepic, Michael Lockie, and Helen Sink. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.